Have you ever found yourself wondering if every emotion, every thought, or every deep feeling stirring within you really needs to be shared with the world? Today, let's take a step into a realm often overlooked, the art of safeguarding the sacred space within ourselves. This is not just a metaphorical corner of our minds, but a profound reservoir of strength, resilience, and serenity. It holds our quiet growth, our unspoken dreams, and the wisdom we've gathered through life's storms. Protecting this space isn't about shutting the world out. It's about choosing intentionally what we allow in and what we let flourish in solitude. Think for a moment about the layers that make us human. They're not simple or surface level. They are layered with complexity, pain we've endured, lessons hard-earned, and aspirations that whisper to us in the quiet of the night. These aren't moments meant for hurried conversations or fleeting posts online. They are deeply personal, intimate chapters that define who we are. And yet, the modern world urges us to broadcast every thought and feeling. We're told that openness equates to authenticity, but does it really? Imagine a vibrant garden, flourishing with delicate blooms and strong, steady roots. This garden represents our inner world. But just as you wouldn't invite a crowd of strangers to trample through your garden, why would you expose the tender shoots of your ideas, your emotions, to an unfiltered gaze? Stoic philosophy reminds us that there is power in restraint. Not everything needs to be shared. In fact, by choosing what to withhold, we preserve the beauty and integrity of our inner selves. Marcus Aurelius captured this sentiment with eloquence. It is in your own power to maintain the beauty of your soul. There is undeniable strength in silence. When we resist the urge to overshare, we protect what is still growing within us. Picture a seedling newly planted in fertile soil. It needs protection, shade from the harsh sun, shelter from the winds, until its roots grow strong. Similarly, our dreams and thoughts need nurturing before they face the scrutiny of the world. Premature exposure often leads to unnecessary judgment, and that judgment, even when well-meaning, can plant seeds of doubt. Yet silence is not weakness. It is wisdom, a quiet strength that allows us to listen, to observe, and to choose our moments with care. Imagine this scenario. You're sitting with friends, and the conversation drifts toward personal goals. Around the table, people share their ambitions. Someone's starting a business, another is learning a new language. But you hold back from mentioning the novel you've been writing in stolen moments of quiet. Not because you're unsure of it, but because it's still a fragile idea, a spark not yet ready for the gusts of opinion. A friend might urge you to share, offering to give feedback, but you know that early exposure could shape it into something less authentic. By keeping it close, you allow it to grow freely, unshackled by expectations or critique. Growth, after all, is a deeply personal process. It's like watching a flower bloom, silent, unseen, yet remarkable when it finally unfolds. Your aspirations don't lose their significance by being private. If anything, they gain strength, protected from the noise and clutter of external influence. Social media, for instance, often glorifies openness, making us feel as though sharing everything is the only way to be genuine. But true authenticity doesn't come from validation. It comes from living in alignment with our core values. Choosing privacy is an act of autonomy, a declaration that we value our mental and emotional well-being over the fleeting gratification of external approval. This doesn't mean cutting ourselves off from the world, but rather building boundaries that protect the sacredness of our inner space. Boundaries are not walls, they are gates, allowing us to choose who and what enters our lives. By cultivating these boundaries, we honor the natural rhythm of growth, giving ourselves the time and space to heal, to reflect, and to evolve. Imagine someone dealing with personal loss. The temptation to share their grief for immediate solace is strong, but doing so before they've processed it could lead to misunderstanding or unwanted advice. Instead, by waiting, they ensure that when they do share, it's with clarity and purpose, not out of raw vulnerability. Stoicism teaches us that patience is a virtue, one that grants us the strength to hold our peace until the right moment. In a world where oversharing is often celebrated, choosing what to keep private is a radical act of self-respect. It says, "I am enough as I am. I do not need to explain or justify my worth." This is not isolation, it's empowerment, a life guided by intentionality, where inner peace is not only valued but fiercely protected. It is through silence and restraint that we reaffirm our intrinsic worth, building a foundation of resilience and clarity that no external force can diminish. The beauty of our inner world lies not in its exposure, but in its preservation. Like a treasure hidden beneath the surface, it shines brightest when nurtured away from the glare of the world. In silence we find liberation, and in that liberation we find ourselves. In a world where everything seems to demand our constant attention, and where sharing has become second nature, privacy can feel like a forgotten art. But privacy is not secrecy. It is an act of love and respect toward oneself. It is the quiet declaration that not everything we are needs to be laid bare for the world to see. By holding parts of ourselves back from the relentless gaze of others, we create space for something invaluable: alignment with our true selves. To live authentically is to honor the balance between who we are on the inside and what we choose to show to the world. It's not about hiding, it's about protecting. It's about recognizing that not every thought, every dream, or every fear needs validation from others to hold value. Marcus Aurelius, a master of introspection, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." It's a simple yet profound truth. Strength lies in the ability to preserve what is sacred within. Consider the idea of alignment, of living a life where your actions, choices, and values are in harmony. This doesn't happen by accident. It requires careful attention and intentionality. When you allow external influences to dictate your path, you risk losing sight of who you are. But when you take the time to cultivate privacy and focus on your core values, you build resilience, the kind that cannot be easily shaken. Imagine for a moment that your inner world is a vast and intricate ecosystem. It's a forest, alive with possibilities and growth, but it's also delicate. If every path through it were exposed, if every corner were trampled, that ecosystem would begin to wither. Protecting it doesn't mean walling yourself off. It means being mindful about who you invite in and what you allow to take root there. Privacy becomes a kind of stewardship, a way of ensuring that what is most precious within you is allowed to thrive. Take the example of J.D. Salinger, the legendary author of The Catcher in the Rye. After the monumental success of his novel, Salinger retreated from the public eye. He chose a quiet life, one where he could write, think, and live free from the pressures of fame and media scrutiny. To the outside world, his retreat might have seemed like isolation, but in reality, it was an act of preservation. He understood that the creative spark he nurtured would flourish only in the quiet, away from the noise of others' expectations. Salinger's choice wasn't a rejection of connection or community. It was a profound act of alignment. By stepping back, he found the space to stay true to his values, to continue creating without interference. His story reminds us that privacy is not a luxury, but a necessity for those who wish to live authentically. It's a lesson that applies not only to artists, but to anyone seeking to honor their inner world. In our modern age, where social media blurs the line between public and private, the challenge of maintaining this sacred space is even greater. There's a pressure to share every moment, to broadcast our successes, our struggles, our lives in real time. This constant connectivity can feel liberating at first, but it often comes at a cost. It exposes us to scrutiny, to judgment, to a kind of noise that can drown out our own inner voice. And in doing so, it chips away at the foundation of our peace. But what happens when we resist this pressure? What happens when we choose to keep parts of our lives just for ourselves? We create a sanctuary, a place where we can reflect, grow, and heal without interference. This sanctuary might be a physical space, a quiet corner of a room, a favorite park bench, or it might be a mental space, a boundary we set in our interactions with others. Wherever it is, it becomes a refuge, a place where we can reconnect with what truly matters. In this sanctuary, we learn to say no, not out of defiance, but out of respect for our limits. Saying no is one of the most powerful acts of self-care we can practice. It allows us to set boundaries, to protect our time and energy, to prioritize what aligns with our values. And yet, saying no can be difficult. It can feel like a rejection, like a missed opportunity. But Stoic philosophy reminds us that every no is also a yes, to ourselves, to our priorities, to the life we want to lead. Consider Warren Buffett, one of the most successful investors of all time. His secret, he once said, wasn't in saying yes to every opportunity, but in knowing when to say no. Buffett's discipline in declining opportunities that didn't align with his long-term goals is a testament to the power of intentionality. By saying no, he created the space to focus on what truly mattered, and in doing so, he built a legacy of unparalleled success. Silence, too, is a form of saying no. It's a way of withholding judgment, of pausing to consider before we act. It's a way of protecting our energy, of conserving our resources, of staying aligned with our values. Imagine someone in a heated argument who chooses not to respond immediately. Instead of reacting impulsively, they remain silent, allowing themselves the space to think, to breathe, to decide on the most thoughtful course of action. Their silence isn't passive, it's powerful. It's a deliberate choice to prioritize their peace over the chaos of the moment. In this way, silence becomes a tool for resilience. It helps us navigate the noise of the world with clarity and purpose. It allows us to listen to ourselves, to others, to the quiet truths that often go unheard in the din of everyday life. And it teaches us that our worth is not determined by how much we say or how often we are heard, but by the strength of our convictions and the integrity of our actions. As we cultivate silence and privacy, we begin to notice a shift. The need for validation fades, the compulsion to explain ourselves lessens. We become more comfortable with who we are, even if others don't fully understand us. This is not arrogance, it's confidence. It's the quiet assurance that our value doesn't depend on others' approval, but is rooted in our own sense of self. And so, the art of protecting our sacred space is not about withdrawal or avoidance. It's about alignment. It's about choosing, moment by moment, to honor the parts of ourselves that are still growing, still unfolding, still finding their way. It's about living with intention, guided by our core values, and creating a life that reflects who we truly are. In the end, our inner world is not a stage. It's not meant for constant display. It's a sanctuary, a treasure, a source of strength and beauty that we carry within us. And when we protect it, when we nurture it, we find that it gives back to us in ways that no external validation ever could. It anchors us, steadies us, and reminds us of the quiet power of simply being ourselves. There is an extraordinary strength in knowing when to step back and hold our peace. In a world constantly urging us to explain, to prove, to showcase ourselves, Choosing to protect our inner sanctuary feels almost revolutionary. But this act of silence and restraint isn't about denying others or withholding connection. It's about cultivating a deeper connection with ourselves. It's about creating a life aligned with our values and shaped by the quiet power of intentionality. Silence, after all, isn't the absence of communication. It's a language of its own. It speaks of self-respect, of patience, of the wisdom to discern when words are needed and when they are not. It is the space between thoughts, where clarity emerges. And in that space we begin to see ourselves more clearly, unclouded by the noise of external expectations. Imagine standing in the middle of a bustling city square, surrounded by the chatter of countless voices. Each voice pulls at you, demands your attention, insists on being heard. Now imagine stepping away from the square, walking into a quiet garden where only the soft rustle of leaves accompanies you. That garden is your inner world. It is where your deepest thoughts, your truest self resides. And just as you wouldn't allow the chaos of the square to overrun the garden, you must guard your inner sanctuary from the relentless demands of the world. Stoic philosophy, with its emphasis on resilience and self-mastery, offers a guide for this journey. It teaches us that our greatest strength comes not from controlling the external world, but from mastering our inner one. Marcus Aurelius, a thinker who faced immense pressures as a Roman emperor, wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul." His words remind us that peace is not something we find outside of ourselves. It is something we cultivate within. Consider the concept of boundaries. These are not barriers meant to isolate us from others, but frameworks that define how we engage with the world. They are acts of kindness toward ourselves and others, because they set clear expectations and protect our energy. When we establish boundaries, we are saying, "This is what I can give, and this is what I need to keep for myself." And in doing so, we create a life that honors our values and preserves our inner peace. Take the example of Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, whose story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In the harrowing conditions of a concentration camp, where every shred of dignity was stripped away, Frankl found strength in his inner world. He clung to his values, his love for his wife, and his belief in the meaning of life, even amidst unimaginable suffering. "Everything can be taken from a man," he wrote, "but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Frankl's story reminds us that even in the most challenging of times, our inner sanctuary remains ours to protect. It is the place where we find meaning, where we hold on to what truly matters, where we draw the strength to persevere. And this sanctuary is not built by accident. It is cultivated through intentional choices, through the practice of self-restraint, through the courage to say no when needed. Saying no is often seen as an act of defiance, but in truth, it is an act of affirmation. It affirms our values, our priorities, our sense of self. It creates the space for us to say yes to what truly matters. But saying no is not always easy. It can feel uncomfortable, even confrontational. Yet Stoic philosophy encourages us to embrace this discomfort, knowing that it is a necessary part of living authentically. Picture someone who is constantly saying yes. Yes to invitations they don't want to accept. Yes to responsibilities that drain them. Yes to demands that conflict with their values. Over time, this person begins to feel stretched thin, disconnected, overwhelmed. Now imagine them learning to say no, gently but firmly, when something doesn't align with their priorities. At first, it feels awkward, but gradually they notice a change. They feel lighter, freer, more aligned with who they are. This is the power of boundaries. This is the power of self-respect. Warren Buffett, one of the world's most successful investors, is known for his ability to say no. Despite countless opportunities that come his way, Buffett is deliberate in choosing only those that align with his long-term goals. When asked about his secret to success, he famously said, "The difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything." His words highlight a profound truth. Saying no is not about rejecting the world. It's about protecting your energy for what matters most. This wisdom is echoed in the stories of countless others who have chosen to live with intention. Nikola Tesla, the visionary inventor, spent much of his life in solitude, not because he lacked the ability to connect with others, but because he understood the need to protect his creative process. By withdrawing from distractions and focusing on his work, Tesla left behind a legacy that continues to shape our world today. His story reminds us that greatness often flourishes in silence, away from the clamor of external demands. But silence is not just a tool for creation. It is also a shield, a way of preserving our dignity and self-worth. In moments of conflict or criticism, choosing silence can be an act of profound strength. It is a way of refusing to be drawn into negativity, of holding on to our peace in the face of chaos. As Epictetus, another Stoic philosopher, said, "It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." In silence, we find the space to choose our reactions wisely. And so, the practice of silence and restraint becomes a way of life. It is a way of honoring the sacredness of our inner world, of living in alignment with our values, of finding peace amidst the noise. It is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Because in the quiet, we discover something extraordinary, the strength to be ourselves, unapologetically, authentically, fully. When we embrace this way of living, we no longer feel the need to prove ourselves to others. We no longer seek validation. Instead, we find validation within, in the quiet strength of knowing who we are, in the peace that comes from living true to our values, roam the outside world. This is the essence of Stoicism. This is the beauty of the inner sanctuary. There's a quiet confidence in someone who knows themselves deeply, who doesn't feel the need to explain their every thought or defend their every choice. They carry themselves with a calm assurance, as if they've discovered a secret that others are still searching for. That secret is this: their worth is not determined by how much of themselves they share, but by how true they are to their values. In the noise of modern life, this kind of confidence can feel rare. We live in a world that constantly urges us to seek validation, to post, to share, to prove that we're doing enough, that we're good enough, that we matter. And while there's nothing wrong with connection or sharing, there's a danger in tying our sense of self-worth to the approval of others. When we do, we hand over the keys to our inner peace, making it dependent on something we cannot control. Stoic philosophy offers us a different path. It teaches us that our peace, our strength, our sense of self must come from within. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." These words are not just a reminder, but a call to action. They challenge us to take responsibility for our inner world, to cultivate it with care, and to protect it from the distractions and judgments of the outside world. Imagine a scenario. You've worked tirelessly on a project, pouring your heart and soul into it. You're proud of what you've accomplished, but when you share it, the response is lukewarm. Some people praise it, others offer criticism, and a few seem indifferent. How do you react? If your sense of self-worth is tied to their reactions, you might feel crushed or validated, depending on what they say. But if your sense of self comes from within, From knowing that you gave your best and stayed true to your values, their reactions lose their power over you. You remain steady, unshaken, grounded in your own confidence. This is not an easy mindset to cultivate, but it is one of the most liberating. When you stop seeking approval from others, you free yourself from the constant push and pull of their opinions. You begin to live for yourself, not for their expectations. This doesn't mean you become indifferent or isolated. It means you learn to value your own perspective as much as, if not more than, the perspectives of others. Consider the story of Nikola Tesla, a man whose brilliance and foresight were far ahead of his time. Tesla's ideas were revolutionary, but many of his contemporaries dismissed him as eccentric or impractical. He faced criticism and ridicule, yet he persisted. Why? Because Tesla wasn't driven by a need for approval. He was driven by his vision, by his values, by an inner fire that no amount of external criticism could extinguish. His story reminds us that greatness often comes from those who dare to live authentically, even when the world doesn't understand them. Living authentically requires courage. It means standing firm in your beliefs, even when they are unpopular. It means pursuing your passions, even when others doubt you. And it means setting boundaries, even when it's uncomfortable. Boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges to a healthier, more balanced life. They protect your time, your energy, your peace, and they ensure that you can give to others from a place of abundance rather than depletion. Imagine someone who says yes to every request, every invitation, every demand on their time. They are constantly giving, constantly doing, constantly trying to meet the expectations of others. At first it might seem admirable. After all, they're helpful, accommodating, selfless. But over time, they begin to feel exhausted, stretched thin, and disconnected from their own needs. Their relationships may even suffer because they're too drained to truly engage. Now imagine this same person learning to say no. At first it feels strange, even guilt-inducing, but as they practice, they realize that saying no doesn't make them selfish, it makes them strong. It allows them to prioritize what matters most, to take care of themselves, and to show up more fully for the people and things they care about. Saying no is an act of self-respect. It's a way of affirming your values and protecting your energy. And it's not just about declining requests. It's about choosing where to focus your time and attention. Warren Buffett, known for his disciplined approach to life and work, once said that the difference between successful people and very successful people is that very successful people say no to almost everything. This principle isn't about shutting yourself off from the world. It's about being intentional with your yeses, reserving them for what truly aligns with your goals and values. This intentionality extends to the way we engage with the noise of the modern world. Social media, for all its benefits, can be a relentless source of distraction and comparison. It tempts us to measure our lives against carefully curated highlights, to seek likes and comments as a form of validation. But Stoicism reminds us that our worth is not determined by these fleeting metrics. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject." By stepping back from the noise, we create space to hear our own voice. We reconnect with what truly matters to us, not what society says should matter, but what we know in our hearts to be meaningful. This might mean spending time in nature, journaling, meditating, or simply sitting in silence. It's in these quiet moments that we discover the clarity and courage to live authentically. The power of silence and restraint is not in what it denies, but in what it allows. It allows us to listen, to ourselves, to others, to the world around us. It allows us to reflect, to grow, to make choices that align with our values. And it allows us to protect our inner peace, even in the face of chaos. Think of a lighthouse standing firm amidst a storm. The waves crash against it, the wind howls around it, but it remains unshaken, its light steady and strong. That is the power of a well-tended inner sanctuary. It doesn't shield us from every challenge or hardship, but it gives us the strength to face them with grace and resilience. And so, the journey of protecting our sacred space is not about retreating from the world, but about engaging with it in a way that is intentional and true. It's about choosing what to share and what to keep private, what to say yes to and what to decline, what to let in and what to let go. It's about living with integrity, guided by our values, and finding peace in the quiet strength of knowing who we are. There's a profound freedom that comes with living a life aligned with your values. It's a quiet kind of liberation, one that doesn't depend on external approval or validation. When you choose to protect the sacred space within yourself, you're not turning away from the world. You're preparing to meet it with greater clarity, strength, and authenticity. This inner sanctuary is where resilience is born. Resilience isn't just the ability to withstand difficulties, it's the capacity to grow through them. When your life is guided by your values, challenges become opportunities for growth rather than reasons to give up. But cultivating this kind of strength requires trust in yourself, and trust in the process of life. Imagine navigating a storm at sea. The waves are rough, the wind is relentless, and the horizon is obscured by darkness. Yet beneath the surface, the ocean remains calm and steady. That deep, unshakable calm is what we cultivate when we protect our inner world. It's what allows us to weather life's storms without losing ourselves in the chaos. Living in alignment with your values also means making peace with the fact that not everyone will understand you. Not everyone will see the depths of your soul or appreciate the choices you make. And that's okay. As Epictetus said, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Your life doesn't need to be a performance for others. It needs to be a reflection of who you truly are. Consider the example of someone who feels out of place because their values differ from the majority. Perhaps they value simplicity in a world that glorifies excess, or seek peace in a culture that thrives on competition. At first, they might feel pressure to conform, to bend their values to fit in. But as they embrace their truth, they discover that living authentically attracts the right kind of connections. People who value them for who they are, not for who they pretend to be, begin to enter their life. This authenticity creates a ripple effect. By staying true to your values, you inspire others to do the same. You become a reminder that it's possible to live a meaningful life, even in a world that often prioritizes the superficial. Like a lighthouse guiding ships to safety, your example becomes a beacon for those who are searching for their own path. But living authentically isn't just about inspiring others. It's also about nurturing yourself. It's about finding joy in the small, quiet moments, the early morning walks, the pages of a journal, the conversations that leave you feeling seen and heard. These moments are where life's true richness lies, not in the fleeting applause of the crowd. This perspective is especially powerful in a world dominated by comparison. Social media tempts us to measure our worth by metrics like likes and followers, but Stoicism reminds us to look inward for validation. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When you shift your focus from external measures of success to the quality of your inner life, you begin to find contentment that isn't tied to the opinions of others. Of course, living this way requires boundaries, not just with others, but also with yourself. It means recognizing when your energy is being drained by habits or situations that don't serve you, and having the courage to make changes. It means saying no to what pulls you away from your values and yes to what brings you closer to them. This isn't always easy, There will be times when you're tempted to seek the comfort of approval or to compromise your values for convenience. But every time you choose authenticity over conformity, you strengthen your inner foundation. You remind yourself that your worth isn't something that can be given or taken away by others. It's something you carry within. Think of someone like Elon Musk, who has faced immense criticism throughout his career. When he first proposed electric cars or reusable rockets, many dismissed his ideas as unrealistic. But Musk wasn't seeking validation. He was pursuing a vision that aligned with his values, and because he stayed true to that vision, he transformed industries and inspired countless others. His story is a testament to the power of living with conviction and clarity. But you don't have to change the world to live authentically. Sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is live a life that feels true to you, even if it looks different from what others expect. It might mean choosing a career that aligns with your passions rather than one that promises prestige. It might mean prioritizing relationships that nourish your soul over those that simply fill your calendar. It might mean embracing a slower, simpler life in a culture that celebrates busyness. Whatever form it takes, authenticity is a gift, not just to yourself, but to the world. When you live authentically, you give others permission to do the same. You remind them that it's okay to slow down, to be different, to honor their inner world. You become a living example of the strength and beauty that comes from living a life guided by values. As you reflect on your own life, ask yourself, are your choices aligned with your values? Are you protecting the sacred space within you, or are you letting the noise of the world dictate your path? These questions are not easy, but they are essential, because the answers will shape the life you create, the relationships you nurture, and the legacy you leave behind. Stoic philosophy teaches us that the most important journey we can take is the one inward. It's a journey of discovering who we are, what we value, and how we want to live. Along the way, we learn to let go of what doesn't serve us and to embrace what truly matters. We learn to find peace in silence, strength in restraint, and joy in authenticity. And so, as we close this reflection, remember that your inner world is your most precious treasure. Guard it, nurture it, and let it guide you. Not every part of you needs to be shared. Not every dream needs to be explained. In the quiet of your own heart, you'll find everything you need to live a life of meaning and purpose. And in living that life, you'll discover a strength and peace that no external force can take away.